It's time to recap the action at the Mubadala New York Sail Grand Prix. High drama on the Hudson, and once again, a familiar face took a big bite out of the Big Apple.
Oh, man. Oh.
Definitely a unique racetrack in the East River here. We got a ton of tide, so it definitely plays a big factor, especially when it's more downrange pressure. The breeze will be coming, basically funneling through, the Hudson River, the East River, and straight through Manhattan. It's going to be all on.
It all converges around the racetrack, so understanding where those channels of current and where they intersect, you need to know all that stuff because it all goes into the decisions you make on the course.
I truly think it's a privilege to do all that we're doing and share our story and show the world what we're doing. I always say that this is the coolest job in the world.
And we welcome you to the recap of event number 6 here in season 6 of SailGP. This was the Mubadala New York Sail Grand Prix. Todd Harris alongside former Emirates GBR athlete Hannah Diamond. Hannah, what an event. It started out with crazy weather, just getting the boats in the water because of craning became a difficulty. And we only got 4 boats in the water to start the day.
Yeah, I think it's one of those really tricky scenarios. There's very strict wind limits for craning. So it wasn't that someone had made a decision for any reason. It was, if the wind is over a certain limit, we cannot crane the boats in. It's not safe. So great that we did manage to get 4 boats in and see some racing in some incredible conditions. But yeah, just a shame we weren't able to get the full fleet on the water.
So the 4 boats that were able to get in the water were Australia, the Bons Flying Roos, of course, Los Gallos, Spain, the defending champions of this event, Emirates GBR also in the water, and then late, the US SailGP team got in. But the Bons Flying Roos had issues on board, so they pulled themselves out, basically, so it came down to 2 boats. We saw some great match racing, I will say that, between Los Gallos and Emirates GBR.
Yeah, we did. And, none of these teams are ever going to let up. If there's a race course out, they're going to race as hard as they can. And I think all of these sailors are super keen to learn as much as they can on any given day. So it was great conditions, very top end, very difficult to sail the boat. And for the teams that were able to get out, I think they probably had a really good time. Yeah,
US SailGP were able to get out for the last 2 races, so they got some quality time in, and Taylor Canfield talked about how important that was. All right, let's talk about the team that leads the league by 10 points coming into this event. That's the Bons Flying Roos. We mentioned that they had issues on day 1 with limited racing when they dipped the nose, but day 2, the problems continued even before the racing started for the Australians.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, Tom Slingsby said that this is kind of he described it as a bogey event for them. They never have felt that comfortable here. We saw them hit something in the water before racing in some of their training laps. Some damage was sustained on board, so they had to get the tech team on board. So it was really time on distance just to get ready for racing today. Not the ideal setup at all, but if anyone can react well in those conditions, it's going to be the Bons Flying Roos.
So it was abbreviated racing on Super Sunday, and it was just 3 fleet races, and then the winner-take-all event final. And in race number 1, the Bons Flying Roos came out and finished in 9th place. So with Spain not being there, effectively dead last. So it looked like, okay, they're not going to make this. 3 in a row is not going to happen for them.
Especially on a weekend like this weekend, where we typically say you can afford to have 1 bad race, you can't afford to have 2. With just 3 races to qualify for the final, for me, it was going to be about the teams who didn't have a bad race. So for them to have such a bad score in the first race, I'd sort of written them off, to be honest, for this weekend. But it just really shows the strength of their team that they were able to get some good scores on the board.
And it was crazy to see how it turned out in race number 2. The Bons Flying Roos would bounce back with a nice result. And it was the Emirates GBR team that won the first race that had a terrible second race. The Americans would win race number 2, so it looked like they were ready to go. It looked like the Americans were in the catbird seat after 2 great races, 2 good finishes. They're on their way to the final, and then they weren't.
Yeah, and I think the nature of the racing today was that it got a little bit windier throughout the day before dropping off right at the end. And so the teams who adapted to that really well were the ones that managed to make the best of that and get the best results. But it was top end for the 27.5 meter wings and really close racing. If you could get out ahead early in the race, it was super easy to sail the boat. But for those who were stuck back in the pack, it would have felt really tricky, really kind of stop-start and hard to keep the boat going fast. So anyone who could get ahead was going to be really great.
All right, and then it was the moment, the 3rd and final fleet race at the Mubadala New York Sail Grand Prix at the start of race number 3. And I was watching this, and I just said, there's just way too many boats in a tight area, and then this happened.
Yeah, that's right. And all day, the fleet, for me, was starting to line up a little bit too close to the line. So you can see here that the Swiss at the bottom end of the line were underneath the Italians. Those boats were definitely too early. And then you have Brazil and the US SailGP team above them, who were required to keep clear of the boats below them. So the Italians here had the right of way to sail up the line. And for me, it was kind of a lack of vision being able to see those boats because they didn't anticipate early enough, but really, really hard to see that in race 3.
So just to clarify the rule, Phil Robertson, who was out in front, had the right to swing it hard right because he didn't want to cross the line and get a penalty for leaving early. But that really left Taylor Canfield on the U.S. team and Martini Grail, Brazil, they didn't really have anywhere to go.
You're right, but it is a little bit more complicated than that because there is also a rule in sailing where you have to do your best to avoid a collision.
Right.
So what the Italians were trying to do was avoid being over the start line early. So that's why they were sailing up the line. In that position, they are the right-of-way boat. So the boats essentially to the right of them, they need to keep clear. But actually, when it gets to a point where you realise that the boats who are the give-way boats are not keeping clear, it's then down to you to avoid a collision. Mm-hmm. And so that's why the Italians have ended up being penalised as well, because they didn't take enough action to avoid a collision. And
you knew it was going to happen. Craig Mitchell having to dole out some penalty points. The Americans get 7 event penalty points. The Italians get 4. None for Mubadala, Brazil. But the bigger problem here is we're 3 weeks away from the next event, and these boats are going to have some work to be done.
Yeah, they are, and we don't know the extent of that damage yet. But the boats have obviously got to get from New York all the way up to Halifax in Canada. And with that short time frame, it's going to be really hard for the tech team to work out what the damage is and affect those repairs in time for racing. All right, so in race number 3, obviously the good news was no one was seriously injured, so the racing continued on. North Star Canada got the win, Giles Scott, and by doing that, he punched their ticket to get into the final, so it was just blown wide open. So the final came down to the Bons Flying Roos. Can't believe they made it after the 9th in race number 1. Emirates GBR, who won race number 1, and then you have Giles Scott and North Star Canada, who we've kind of felt have been on the fringe of do they turn the corner now? Do they make the move? Because they have the talent. Yeah, that's right. And I think they've had a really disappointing start to the season. So for them in the final race, they really had nothing to lose. This was kind of a moment where they could climb up the leaderboard. There were also 2 of the titans of the season involved in this final. And it was really nip and tuck between the Australians and the British. Opting for a split at the bottom of the course, we'd seen the left turn be quite strong, but Dylan Fletcher on Emirates GBR with Hannah Mills as the strategist tried to split away from the Australians. At this point here, there's a really interesting scenario because the Bons Flying Roos, the defending manoeuvre here would be to tack over in the position they're in now. They don't. They carry on. And that, for me, was a big mistake from the Bons Flying Roos because it allows Emirates GBR to get just ahead. Straight shot. Exactly. Yeah. And, a really difficult moment for the Bons Flying Roos. Never put them into a corner, though, because they will always come out fighting. And Dylan Fletcher here tried to push that jibe, tried to force that manoeuvre early, no penalty being given, which just opened the door again for the Bons Flying Roos to take the win. We were able to hear on board both boats talking about protest, but in the end, the Emirates winning moment goes the way of the Bons Flying Roos as they have won 3 in a row, 4 of the 6 overall. I mean, we knew coming into this season they had the class to win it again. They've already won 3 titles in SailGP in 6 years, but they have put together a squad now, and they are sailing so well, and we're just at the halfway point. Yeah, and Ian Jensen's kind of the biggest change to that team, and he obviously was injured at the beginning of the season in that first event in Perth, but he is an unbelievable wing trimmer, so just really strengthening that team. So let's talk about the controversy on that last gate. Stevie Morrison, I know he was keen that we were going to hear from Craig Mitchell. There would be a penalty. What are your thoughts at the moment, and then what were your thoughts afterwards? Well, I thought it was quite an interesting choice for Emirates GBR to try and push that manoeuvre across the front of the Bons Flying Roos. In the moment, we were looking at it from an angle which made it, from our perspective, from the commentary booth, quite hard to call. But I think it wasn't as close as it perhaps looked, which is why there was no penalty given. But at that point, you've got the mark coming up, which is the final turn of the event. You have to try something. If you're in second position, but you're overlapped or you're very close, you're going to be doing everything you can, using the rules to your advantage as much as you can. So then there was another protest put on by Emirates GBR to Bons Flying Roos, which again came out with no penalty. But this just demonstrates that these are 2 skippers who are really happy to push the boats to the limit to try and take these event wins.
Well, speaking of happy, once again, the happiest team is the Bonds Flying Roos. Their owners, Hugh Jackman, Ryan Reynolds. They are very happy with what Tom Slingsby and his team have been able to do. After the racing, Lisa Darmanin catching up with the winners.
Tom, you broke the New York curse. It wasn't looking good yesterday. It wasn't looking good at the beginning of the race, but how good does it feel to win 3 in a row?
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing feeling. We were on the back foot all day. It just felt like we were just trying to claw our way back into the races. And then, yeah, that last race was exciting. Ended up getting away with it, a close one.
Yeah, it was right to the wire there with the British team. Just talk us through that finish. It was a bit wild.
It was a bit wild, yeah. We thought we had the rights, they thought they had the rights. Umpires ruled in our favour, and yeah, so 3 times winners, we're very happy.
And how tricky was the racing today? It just looked so challenging.
It was so tough today. That's one of the hardest days I've done sailing, probably in my life, not just in SailGP. It's just so patchy, everything's changing. We're a bit out of range on this wing and the forecast. It was tough, but like, the team just did such a good job, and our shore team just did an amazing job. I mean, I thought we weren't going to be racing. We had that many broken things and problems, and the shore team just came together and got us back out there, and we owe it to them this one.
Well, you better go spray the champagne. The team's ready.
Okay, cheers.
So it's all smiles for the green and gold as they win again. As we now take a look at the standings, it is the Bonds Flying Roos, 11 points clear of the defending champions from last year, Emirates GBR, on 44 points. The US SailGP team, despite that frustrating finish, they are still in 3rd place. All right, so New York City is now complete. We turn our attention north of the border. We return to a site we've been to before. Halifax, Canada will be event number 7 for season 6. That's coming up on June 20th and 21st, and the fans will be out in force in Halifax.
Canada's home waters are calling as SailGP returns to Halifax, back and bigger than ever. The northernmost stop on the Americas circuit and the halfway point of the 2026 championship. This is where the season really heats up. The crowd will be going wild on the sweeping grandstands as the F-50s race around George's Island. Every single point matters as Canada's most thrilling summer event takes center stage.
And we're excited to be going back to Halifax, Canada. You have some good memories, and I just remember the crowds were massive.
We could not believe the number of people that turned out to watch. The weather was pretty miserable, but you know, for Emirates GBR, we managed to win that event when Giles Scott was driving.
Right.
So he'll definitely be trying to go back to back there with North Star Canada this time round. It's an incredible venue, but the fans were really, really next level.
So what makes it challenging? What makes it trickier? Is it a pretty straightforward course, straightforward conditions?
Well, it's kind of it's almost like a canal-shaped race course. So if the wind's going up and down that channel, then the race course there's plenty of space for a SailGP course. But if the breeze is slightly kind of off angle to that, it can be really tricky. There's a little bit of current that runs through, and it's a really cool venue, but it can throw up its challenges, that's for sure.
I don't want to end on a negative note, but I feel like sometimes we are 1 step forward, 2 steps back. So the good news is for Halifax, we get back the Blackfoils. Peter Burley, Blair Tuke will be back on the line. Their boat is repaired, ready to go. But what do you anticipate with the Americans, the Italians, and the Brazilians? Will their boats be ready in time? We're talking 3 weeks. That is a quick turnaround.
It's really quick. And I think, you know, at the moment, I don't think anyone's got an answer to that. All I know is that the tech team are an incredibly dedicated group of individuals. They have had their work cut out this season, that's for sure, with a number of repairs that they've had to do. And they will do their best to get everyone back on the start line. But I think in some ways, you know, thankfully, there were no injuries on board. Right. It is the nature of this close quarters racing that boats are going to come together. The teams will do as best they can to avoid that. But I think it's going to be hard to see all 3 of those teams on the start line in Halifax.
Well, thanks again, Hannah, for your insight. Always spot on. And we look forward to seeing you at our next event as we head north of the border. It will be the Canada Sail Grand Prix Halifax. That's coming up June 20th and 21st. Of course, we'll have the countdown for you. Stevie Morrison will be back with us. But for now, for Hannah Diamond, I'm Todd Harris. We'll see you next time.